warning! This is a review of a FNaF fan comic, which, compared to the games it was based on, is significantly more graphic. So if you're someone who doesn't like that stuff, I recommend skedaddling. Got all that? Good, here we go. Well, hi diddly ho, watcherinos. A while ago, and by a while ago I mean 7 months ago as of recording this, jeez, I reviewed the FNaF movie, and made a point about how I wasn't really satisfied with how the missing children were handled. Mainly the whole they were possessed by William thing, which I felt was kind of a missed opportunity compared to what some fan interpretations have done with them. In that video, I showed 2 primary examples. One was the far more well-known Archive 1983, and the other was one a bit more personal to me. And that was... Hey, wait a minute! Why do my talk sprites look different? Why do I look more cheaply made? Why do I have a mullet now? Oh, well, because they're still trying to recover the memory from your laptop, you kinda had to redraw all the talk sprites, and, you're really bad at drawing consistently. Do I know you? Yeah, remember, I'm the Minecraft you from the map tour video. Get out. What? Get out of the fucking video. People already got annoyed with this shit when the Channel Awesome guys did it. We do not need side characters in these videos. Oh. That's better. Anyways, let's talk about children. The comic, not actual children, fuck no. Beginning its run on April 27th of 2016, before getting abruptly cancelled on January 6th of 2019, Children was effectively a recap of what you might have thought the lore of the franchise was before Sister Location came out. With the slight catch that the whole story was told from the perspective of not the guards, but the children haunting the animatronics. And since I don't really see that many people talking about it on YouTube, though the Discord server says that apparently someone else is going to be making a video on the remake, I thought I'd share some love for the original. So if you will, watch this video as we take a trip back through Children. Our story begins June 26th, 1986. Yep, 1986. Just a year before FNaF 2. While you could kind of argue that's maybe a bit too fast, I personally don't really mind it. I feel like with the way it's written, it would be kind of weird if we just kept time skipping every single game. So, I'm fine with it in all honesty. It's also in this first scene, we're introduced to the 5 missing children. Keep in mind, again, this comic started in 2016, so the kids here are not the ones from canon. So, in this comic, we instead have Daniel, Bianca, Charlie, Francis, and Michael. Not gonna bother listing who they possess, because just looking at them should make it kind of obvious. It was the early days of the fandom. Every interpretation of the missing children looked like this back then. Most at least, anyways. Also, in spite of what you might be thinking, this isn't Michael Brooks, it's Michael Gould. And I bring that up solely because I myself made that mistake when I first read the comic. As for the comic itself, we currently see our 5 main characters being lured away to the back room by a yellow bunny. And since this is a FNaF story, I see absolutely nothing that could go wrong here. And absolutely no way this could possibly end in death and murder. Nope, this is just gonna be a fun little adventure with the fun yellow rabbit guy where absolutely nothing at all is possibly ever going to go wrong. Why? Well, isn't this the part where we cut away? Why are we still watching them? We're gonna like cut to black or something? Holy shit, we're going all in! Yes, they show the whole thing. And it's graphic as fuck. Oh. Okay, there are 2 versions of any page where a character dies. There's the censored version, which is basically the black silhouettes on a red background that you've been seeing so far, mostly. And the uncensored version, which is exactly what you think it is. Honestly though, here specifically, I think the censored one works better, and it's mainly down to how the comic draws Afton in these scenes. They add this cartoonishly big grin and these cartoonishly big eyes to him, which is really cool stylistically. Like, it fits Afton really well. The deaths themselves are pretty creative too. It's not just he stabs them the end. But no, there actually is some kind of thought put into the deaths here, which is weirdly commemorable, regardless of how psychotic that sounds. But my favorite is Michael, who is chased into a springlock suit and dies within it. Oh, that sounds kind of familiar. It's almost like that's something that's like been in the franchise before. Bluntly, I love this. Just the idea the Golden Freddy kid died the same way he or she would kill Afton years later is just like, it's cool, it's nice symmetry. But it's also kind of in this part of the comic we reach the first main issue that me and a lot of other people have with the comic. And that's the pacing. Let me put this into perspective. The, bloodbath, we'll call it that, starts on page 6 and doesn't end until page 22. In other words, the entire murder scene lasts a whopping 16 pages. I definitely get wanting to include as much as you can, and don't get me wrong, some of the additional stuff he throws in is pretty good, especially the little speech William gives to Michael about the springlocks mirroring Silver Eyes. But, yeah, going back to it, I definitely did not remember the murder scene lasting so long, and I can kinda see what people were complaining about now. One other personal flaw I have is this one scene where William just grabs Charlotte and walks past the main area with the animatronics. Like, really? There were no other staff members in the main area seeing him just walk by? I mean, yeah, the comic says that we are in the late hours of operation when the murder happens, but really? He's the only guy there? I don't know, maybe to some people it's nothing, but it's just always like something I've weirdly found odd about it. Following the murder, we're introduced to the puppet, who, in this universe, is actually possessed by Sammy. For those not in the know-how, Sammy is Charlie's twin brother, who was mentioned in the novel trilogy. I'm saying this because the books didn't really do anything with him, so you forgetting his existence is fairly understandable. Weirdly, this headcanon was just kind of everywhere back in, like, 2016, 2017. Not fully sure, but want to say children was what started the trend, but it was definitely a trend, I guess. Great fucking dialogue. Great fucking dialogue. I mean, you're great at making YouTube videos. Back to the comic, though. I honestly kind of like what they do with the puppet here, mostly. The base concept. Like most versions of the FNaF story, the puppet child is stated to be the first kid killed. The official children wiki, because yes, this comic has a wiki. Honestly, there's some pretty cool info on there though, if you want to go check it out. For example, I learned that Daniel is apparently French. Okay, went on a bit of a tangent there, but whatever, back to what I was talking about. The wiki lists Sammy as having died in 1976, while the comic, as of this current point in the storyline, takes place in 1986. Meaning that Sammy has been possessing the puppet for 10 years. So understandably, he's kinda fucking loopy. There we go. Feels good to be able to stretch my arms again. I haven't done this in a long time. See? I'm dead. Just like you. Look at my chest. There's blood coming out of it, right? I bet you can tell how I died, right? Don't ask why I decided that that should be his voice. I just thought it'd be funny. There's another scene I feel makes my point better, but that one's kind of spoilery for something I want to talk about in a bit, so I'll voice that later. Meanwhile, the puppet has to tell the kids that they're dead. Up to this point of being ghosts, they've assumed the whole getting murdered thing was a dream, or at least Bianca did. And as a result, the puppet needs to tell them that they're dead. This scene, and overall the comic as a whole, is kind of the first time I ever really got a melancholy feel from the FNaF series. Which, in retrospect, is kind of dumb, considering, you know, the good ending of FNaF 3 exists. But either way, I still kind of want to thank this comic for introducing me to the concept. I feel like it weirdly shaped what I like in FNaF content as a whole, in all honesty. As for the scene itself, I feel like the remake kinda does it better. They're both good for different reasons, but I feel the remake kinda gets an edge because they don't have Francis just show up and say, "Yep, nope, suck it up, Bianca, we're dead." Though I still want to make it clear that I still really enjoy aspects of the original scene. That desperate denial Bianca has is genuinely pretty fucking sad, especially when you remember that it's a child going through this. Anyways, then we get the one scene that wasn't really fixed by the remake at all, even though it really needed to be. We got introduced to Michael's ghost design, which looks really fucking cool. I haven't touched upon that, but yeah, the ghost designs are basically just like super cool. Along with the more typical they're pale now to go along with the in-game sprites. They also carry the injuries they had when they died, which is probably my favorite reinterpretation of the ghost sprites that I've seen from the fandom. Or at least one of. Back to what I was saying, however, we get a really stupid Fallout scene that kinda gets fixed within pages, and doesn't really affect all that much after, from what I can tell. Granted, that might have changed. I could totally see a scenario where the others hating Michael could have come back around in maybe the FNaF 1 arc, but with the premature end, I guess we'll never know. Also, I hate to say it, but I kinda started to realize how janky the dialogue is sometimes. Oh, I'm glad you're feeling pain. You deserve it. Don't come near me ever again. Francis, what did you do? I just wanted him to go away. You didn't have to push him. Now he's going to fall. That's not good. What are you talking about? That's the best thing you could do right now. I am willing to give it a pass, considering, like I stated earlier, I'm pretty sure English was not the native tongue of the guy who made this. But I'd be lying if I didn't say it was kinda distracting and sorta jarring coming back to it years later. Also, Francis is kind of an asshole. Which I'd be fine with if that was his character. After all, some kids are just kind of assholes. But like, he was pretty fucking noble during the murder scene. He literally took the knife for Charlie. Why is he suddenly a dick? But again, I'm pretty sure the remake fixes this, so not that big of an issue looking back. After that, we get a cute little scene between Sammy and Michael. A rare sight, as we'll soon see. And then, Sammy teaches the other kids how to possess the animatronics. Not fully sure how it works. Seems like all he really does is touch it with his hand, and he possesses it just through that, I guess. Then again, it's not like the games really did all that much to explain it. Not when this part of the comic was being made, at least. But uh-oh, it appears Francis doesn't want to possess an animatronic. Shocker, I know. There is only one possible solution. Roast him! Do you really think your parents are going to accept you like you are right now? Look at yourself, idiot. You got your chest and your belly cut and your guts can fall out any second now. Oh, and also, you're a ghost. You're not yourself anymore. You're just an image, a fragment of what you once were. You're not a kid anymore. You can't go back home to your parents. You can't show yourself anymore. What will people think? They'll think you're an abomination. A monster! Trust me, buddy, I know it better than anyone. So, what do you prefer? Staying here with your friends and living a peaceful afterlife? Or going outside and being rejected by everyone you see? It's your choice, matey. Good. The scene where he helps Michael possess Golden Freddy is cool too. I like the little explanation on why Golden Freddy doesn't have a purple hat like most versions of Fredbear. With the explanation that he's actually the Fredbear we see in Stage 01, which had a brown hat. Which, not exact, but at the same time I can totally see the brown slowly fading to black. More than I could the purple hat at least. And with the pieces put in place, we can move on to a... Sammy, what are you doing? Oh yeah, they're gonna be fine indeed. Not. Stupid kids, they fell for every single one of them. I'm glad they did. Don't worry, Michael. I'm going to avenge you. You won't be seeing those miserable faces for a long time. They're all going to pay for what they did to you. Of course I could have given them freedom. Liberty do whatever they want. Let them be free. But no, they don't deserve it. Apologies won't take them anywhere. What's done is done. They'll suffer the consequences. Huh? Yep. The puppet is a villain now. And I ain't that much of a fan of the change. I mean, like, I can kinda see what the thought process was. I think he was trying to give the whole puppet and purple guy rivalry a bit more of a nuance to it. You know, kind of implying that both were shitty people and both did shitty things. Even though I still feel it's kind of undeniable that William's done shittier. The thing is that looking back on it, I don't really get Sammy's logic here? Oh, apologies don't get you anywhere. Then, like, under your rules, how does the cake get them anywhere? I thought it was supposed to represent them apologizing to Michael, but Bianca already did that, in full view of Sammy. And even then, Sammy said apologies don't count for him. Maybe it would have been expanded upon or fleshed out more if the comic finished, but as it stands, it kind of feels like artificial conflict. Very much in the same way the initial argument felt like artificial conflict. The remake definitely handles Sammy better in my opinion. They still portray him as kinda loopy, but at the same time, they also don't make him evil for no reason. Like, they have clear scenes that show underneath it all he still genuinely cares, which I think is for the better. Where was I? Oh yeah! It's time to head to the day shift! Oh wait, we have no control over the robots at all during the day. Honestly, this scene's just kinda funny. Not sure if that was intended to be a comedic scene, but hey, it was slightly funny. And we then get another fuck, this franchise is kind of depressing when you think about it scene. William Afton lying to their parents' faces. The parents is something else the comic touches on that the games never really did and kinda still haven't. And that's with living with the fact that your kid is dead. Not even that, having to live thinking there's a chance they're out there when we, the audience, know there isn't. Just the idea, and even the line from Bianca is pretty sad. Bianca gets literally all of the best scenes in this comic. Wow. She is the fucking MVP of the original comic. Zach William fucking smirks after they leave. Jeez. Slightly before the parents scene, however, we run into this young lad. An unsuspecting young boy in a green shirt and blue pants. He never appears in the comic again after this, but it's pretty interesting regardless. Let me explain. Firstly, this kid openly says he knows Michael and the others, saying that he was gonna go to the party, but his mom wouldn't let him. An odd detail to give to a character who, as it stands, seems to be a seemingly one-off nothing character. Sometime later, Bonfim released this image that detailed his original AU back when FNaF 1 was first released. Which, what do you know, where he says that he planned for Mike Schmidt to just have barely escaped being a victim of the missing children's incident. And then, in a FNaF 1 anniversary image, we see this guy, who presumably is also meant to be Bonfim's version of Mike, and he looks suspiciously like this young boy. Note the brown hair and tanned skin. And lastly, when introducing himself to a character we'll talk about later, the first two letters out of his mouth are M. There was a decent enough evidence to assume this, and originally I was just gonna leave it purely as speculation, but I went one extra mile. I took to the official Children Discord server, ran by Bonfim himself. Left a message on there, which basically boiled down to just, yo, was this guy meant to be Mike Schmidt at one point or another? Yes, he was. Validation, bitches! The idea unfortunately fell through when Sister Location came out and unveiled Mike Lafton, who everybody pretty quickly pieced together was also meant to be Mike Schmidt. And Bon, according to the wiki, he thought that having 3 characters in the comic, all named Michael, would be confusing. So Schmidt got the drop and was renamed to Miguel instead. Though, now that I think about it, the comic never actually does make it to FNaF 1, so in universe we don't have any direct debunking of this being Mike from FNaF 1, so headcanon achieved, kind of. Jokes aside, it honestly kinda sucks this idea got cut. Mike knowing the missing kids when he was younger is honestly a kind of interesting idea for a backstory if we ignore what canon went on to do with him. Was kinda hoping the remake would bring the idea back since they went back to only using FNaF 1 through 4, but nope. Character's named Alec now. Shit. Back to the comic itself, Daniel decides that watching his parents leave from afar isn't enough. So he brings Freddy off the stage so he can go and say goodbye himself. Much to the dismay of Sammy. He shouldn't be moving. He should stay in his place during the day. He can't do that. How is he doing that? Probably because this is before the bite of 87. Ergo, Freddy moving off stage during the day would be seen as nothing out of the ordinary. Doesn't seem to matter though, as William promptly knocks Freddy out with a crowbar. This causes Mike to see a bit of Daniel's body inside of Freddy, and after being threatened by William, takes his leave from both the restaurant and the comic as a whole. Cutting tonight, where we are then introduced to the manager and the phone guy. Two really underrated characters in all honesty, as I feel they kind of add another wrinkly detail to the series. That being that Fazbear Entertainment is run by assholes. Phone guy, understandably, is kinda concerned about the fact that a dead body was found inside of Freddy. The manager? Not so much. I know what to do. Let's hide it inside the safe room. No one's gonna look in there. Safe room? But the employees go in there all the time. I'll just tell them not to, unless extremely necessary. I'm the owner of this damn thing, after all. I still think it's not a good idea. I still think we should get rid of the suit as fast as we can. Do I really need to explain it again to you? If we get rid of the suit, the body inside it will be found one way or another. But if we burn it, there's gonna be nothing left. Fire doesn't make things disappear. Just damages them enough for them to be considered useless. Burning the suit will only get it charred. The corpse will still be in there, idiot. Do I need to say any more? No, sir. Good. Help me drag the suit into the safe room as fast as possible. I already got the head. It's pretty heavy. Of course it's heavy. It has an entire metal skull, wires, cables, crossbeams, and a crushed child's head inside it. You didn't have to say the last part. Yeah, I didn't. I just like messing with you. Yep, they just drag Michael's body into the safe room to rot. Christ. This is kinda like the parents thing in a way. It's something the games have hinted at, but never fully explored. And while, yeah, the remake definitely does a better job of doing it, I don't completely hate how they do it here either. You know, I do kinda prefer the more sympathetic version of the manager in this version. Okay, sympathetic is way too nice. The slightly nicer version of the manager in this version. Fuck, even that feels too nice. Look, he has like one scene where he slightly looks like he cares, and then another much later on where he questions why he's even still the manager. Like, it's not much, but at least for the time being, it puts him above the manager in the remake, okay? But don't be surprised if you lose your crown, man. Okay, yeah, I'm going off topic. Back to what I was actually talking about. Now, yes, I'm fully aware that portraying Fazbear Entertainment as a shitty company is pretty commonplace now, both in fan works and actually official stuff. But keep in mind, this was 2016. A time where I don't really recall this idea being used that often. Honestly, I think, aside from Children itself, the closest you got to that was jokes that could honestly be applied to just about any Chuck E. Cheese parody. So, technically speaking, this would make Children kind of a trendsetter. Well, at least I think. For all I know, this could have been totally a thing back in 2015, 2016, and I just wasn't aware of it. Moving on, we get to... Wait, what part of the comic is next? My people. We've reached peak! Seriously, I'm pretty sure this part of the comic is why I was so dissatisfied with how the movie handled the missing children, so get ready. And let me explain. As night falls over Freddy Fazbear's Pizza once again, Sammy spills the beans to the others on what they're going to be doing for the night, which is effectively what you see in the games themselves. Robots walking around, trying to stuff you in a suit, blah blah blah. And their response to potentially doing this is, understandably, what the fuck? No, why the hell would I do that? What the hell is wrong with you? Genuinely though, I like the idea that they don't immediately go insane in this version. At first, their reaction to this is the same as any normal person, which makes the knowledge of what they go on to do kinda tragic. I even like some of the scenes Sammy has, where he tries to convince them to do it. Not a fan of the scene where he reveals himself, but at the same time, that could totally just be because I'm not all that chuffed on evil puppet as a concept. What I am chuffed about is Bianca's first kill. Sounded creepier than I thought, but okay. I can't really show much, since the rest of this video should probably show that I'm not that good of a voice actor. Oh! But I recommend you read this part on your own, because it is depressing as fuck. On the way up to the office, she has a whole ass debate on whether or not what they're doing is even right or not. Sure, this guy could be William, but what if he's not? Then you've just murdered an innocent man. A logic that still applies to the games. Go back to FNaF 1, and Phone Guy openly admits that there were night guards before Mike that died.
Hey, you're doing great. Most people don't last this long.
Which means that this very scenario Bianca worries about has probably occurred more than its fair share of times. This moment here of her fucking snapping his neck is so disturbing yet oddly melancholy. How many fucking things am I gonna say in this video that just sound like I'm gonna get put on a watch list for saying them? If this was just a normal FNaF thing or a FNaF VHS video, this would be wholly on the scary factor. But unlike most VHS videos, we see the kid's POV. And the stuff she says just before it is pretty fucking sad. So yeah, Bianca's still the MPV of this comic. Oh, she's gone insane. I kinda question this scene. I guess it works as foreshadowing for how they're all gonna act later, but Bianca doesn't act this crazy when we do get to that point, and it's over kinda fast. Personally, I think it would have been better if she actually did stay sane after she murdered the guard. Like, can you imagine how fucking heartbreaking it would be if we saw that? Not much else to say about this scene in all honesty. Yep. Nothing else at all. What about the implied shipping? I told you to fuck off! I ain't getting into that shit. I'll just say it's not as bad as other examples of shipping, but at the same time the dialogue is low-key kinda cringe. Sometimes it kinda makes me want to be like Sammy and head out. Oh yeah, that's right, Sammy leaves the building and takes Michael along with him so they can visit some of his friends. Just before that though, we get a scene of Charlie venting about the fact that, you know, her body, and by proxy her ghost form, is burnt due to the way Afton murdered her. I think this comic was the beginning of my addiction to angst. And shortly after that, we meet the friends Sammy was talking about. Two teenagers who were killed at an older Freddy's location named Connor and Chloe, who here are the true identities of Shadow Freddy and Shadow Bonnie. We also learned that Sammy's a big fat liar. These guys aren't really friends with him at all. Not gonna lie, retroactively looking back on these ones compared to their remake counterparts, the originals are kinda bland. Like, bland to a point where I'm not really sure how to even talk about them. Like, let me put this into perspective. You know, Michael and Jane in the original Mary Poppins, that's these two to me. In the sense that I can't really decipher much of a unique personality between the two. They kind of meld together in all honesty. They feel more like one character split into two rather than two individual characters, if you get what I mean. Something I feel the remake definitely improves on. We also get potentially some kind of backstory as to why Sammy is the way he is, which is kinda left open-ended. I'm sure if the comic finished, we'd probably learn more of what happened here, but it didn't, so after that, it's time for the FNaF 4 arc. I have some choice words about the FNaF 4 arc.
You what?
Don't get me wrong, not all bad. I might go as far and say this is the most oddly charming part of the entire comic. Not really mentioned it until now, but this comic is a really unique charm that just kind of brings me back to that early 2016 era of the fandom. You got fan ideas of who the missing children were, Sammy being the puppet like I mentioned earlier, even the incident in the beginning taking place at a restaurant called Fredbear and Friends. That one hits especially hard for me. Rest in peace, classic Roblox FNaF. And the FNaF 4 arc is where you'll unironically find this kind of stuff the most. The adaptation of the walk home from Fredbear's, I feel, encapsulates this the most. But for now, let's focus on what actually happens in the arc. The arc, as the title would make you assume, is an adaptation of FNaF 4's minigames. We're introduced to this comic's version of the bite victim, named Kenny, along with the older brother, named Brian. Hey, there's something nostalgic. Back when he was first introduced, hating the older brother with a fiery passion. Happened more often than you think. His dad fucking rips into him at the end here, jeez. The comic isn't completely mean to him though, it does try to give him some depth. Mainly this one scene which implies that him bullying Kenny is pretty much solely peer pressure. Cool headcanon, I like it. Could fit pretty seamlessly into the lore now in all honesty. From there I think we can round back to the walk home from Fredbear's. I could definitely see why other people would view this as a pretty nothing scene overall, but I don't know, I find it oddly charming to see Bond's interpretations of these random one-off characters. Personally, I'd say Pigtail Girl and Freddy Bully are the main standouts in this regard, with the former turning out to be the younger sister of the Bonnie Bully, while the latter turns out to also be the laughing kid seen in FNaF 4, which is something I did not expect to kick me in the balls with nostalgia, but somehow it did. We also get a little scene where he actually starts to empathize with Kenny a bit. That's nice. Eventually, to the shock of absolutely nobody, this eventually culminates in...
The bite of 87?
Actually, Mark, yeah, in this comic it is. Yeah, this scene's pretty good. On one hand, it's not as big of a deal as other scenes, due to the FNaF 4 bite being a more commonly recreated scene in fan works. But this is where you get the reveal that Brian was peer pressured into bullying Kenny, and it's pretty faithful to the original minigame overall. Even managed to incorporate the kids from the earlier minigame into it too, I like that. Needless to say, they kill it with the aftermath of the bite. It's literally just one page of everyone's reaction to it, but it works so well. Holy shit, the dialogue tells a scene of them trying to get Kenny out of Fredbear's mouth, and implies they made the situation like 10 times worse from doing so. Even the dialogue straight up implies that, like, that's why Kenny lost his frontal lobe. That's so fucking dark. Holy shit.
Oh my god! We've killed Kenny! We're bastards!
Yep. Had to get that joke in there. It was obvious. Anyways, you're probably wondering why I said I had a few choice words about this part of the comic in the beginning. Seems so far I've had nothing but positive things to say about it. But here's the thing. This stuff's all good in a vacuum, but for the larger story of the comic, it feels pretty disconnected. The main thing that connects it to the rest of the comic is that Sammy is the one possessing the Fredbear plushie. Also, Connor and Chloe show up in 2 scenes, and Michael shows up in 1. Oh, and then the fact that Kenny also appeared before this. Pretty much none of these characters really show up again after this. They're in this one arc and then just kind of disappear. The only one who doesn't is Kenny, and even then, he's pretty useless after this. He doesn't possess anybody, and the injuries from the bite caused him to become a vegetable. While we're on the topic of that, this might just be up there as one of the most disturbing things I've seen come out of this fandom. Like, what the fuck, man? On its own, this wouldn't be too bad. Under that logic, you could easily just skip the whole arc and you wouldn't miss a thing. Story-wise, at least. If it weren't for one thing that really irks me about this part of the comic. Following the end of the arc, Sammy, Michael, Connor, Chloe, and the newly dead Kenny make their way to the new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizza from FNaF 2. There, we reunite with Daniel, Bianca, Charlie, and Francis, and... Hey, I don't remember you, but you seem familiar. Why, I think I remember now. Bianca, he's that one kid, Sammy. The same one from a year ago? The same one who abandoned us? The same one who made me lose me mind. You have a lot of courage coming here after all this time, matey. Do you really think we'd give ye a warm welcome? Why did you leave? Why did you leave all of us to rot and suffer? But it's alright. We didn't need you. We learned how to take care of ourselves. We were brave. And what did you do? You abandoned us.
I'm so proud of you guys.
So, I'm probably about to sound really salty in this section. So in advance, I'm sorry. With that being said, this is kinda why I view the FNaF 4 arc as a detriment to the overall story. Daniel and the others go insane completely off screen. We're told what supposedly happened since the last time we saw them, but come on, show don't tell, my guy. Everything the characters go on to talk about here would have been way more interesting to see. At least more than spending time with a character who does nothing. Again, Kenny's practically useless going forward. If you absolutely had to adapt FNaF 4, why not alternate between the 2 perspectives? You know, do a minigame of FNaF 4 and then cut back to Daniel and the others. That way, we both get our FNaF 4 adaptation, and we can have all the neat stuff that comes with it, without feeling like we just missed a bunch. Maybe not the best way of fixing it, since I could definitely see how it might exasperate the whole pacing thing, but it's the best I've got without drastically changing anything. In case you're curious about how I feel about Rekindled's version of it, I'd say that it's definitely an improvement. They show the first time Charlie helped with the guard, and also Daniel's first kill, along with a few extra scenes peppered throughout, namely Michael's reaction to Bianca's first kill. I feel these overall definitely do make the cut back to the original gang after the FNaF 4 arc a lot more seamless than it was before. But even with that in mind, I can't help but still feel kinda salty for how the original comic did it. For as choppily explained as it was, the stuff described here, especially with how Daniel's first kill was supposedly meant to go down in this version, sounds like it could have made for some good set pieces if they were shown in full. And I can't lie, I'm still kind of annoyed that I'm never really gonna see that. Back to the comic, however, we cut to daytime and— John, where are you? I want to show you something. It's pretty cool. There you are, John. I want to show you something. I made it myself. Oh my god, that precious little thing is everything the doctor ordered. I forgive you completely. Mad respect for being a part of the Toys Are Possessed gang. He's one of us, fellas. One of us! One of us! One of us! The kids in question haunting the toys are John, Lily's aforementioned older brother, who possesses Toy Freddy, Paige, who possessed Mangle, Jessica, who possessed Toy Chica, Ronald, who possessed Balloon Boy, and the aforementioned Lily, who possesses Toy Bonnie, and is a pure ball of innocence. So of course, as you can guess, she's the first one that Afton whacks.
Think fast, Chuckle Nuts!
Before that, however, we do get a little scene before then, which, just gives us a bit of character on them. Something that, kind of think of it, was sort of missing from the original 5. But then again, they did get ones in the remake, so not that big of a loss in hindsight. As for the scene itself, I like it. It gives us a chance to know who these characters are before Afton comes in and kills them. We learn that Paige is a tomboy, Jessica's super angsty, and may or may not have something going on at home. They kind of implied in this one scene. I'm assuming it's another casualty of the comic not finishing. There's a similar scene with Charlie's dad way earlier in the comic where he says that he can't lose her again, and then Francis seemingly mentions the same event earlier when they're all getting murdered. Not sure what these were meant to be, and due to the comic being cancelled, I probably never will, unless Bond somehow finds this video and leaves a YouTube comment, which would give me a fucking heart attack in all honesty. In other news, this is the part of the comic where I realize that Ronald is my fucking spirit animal. I'll let you know you're talking with the same person who reached World 8 in Super Mario Brothers! And didn't beat Bowser. And beat Zelda 1 and 2! And used a Nintendo Power magazine to do it. And got Ghosts and Goblins' true ending! And threw his controller out the window when he found out about the fake ending. Can we just take a minute to appreciate how smooth that 80s dialogue was? They never really bring attention to the fact it's an 80s thing. They just reference it as if it's just a normal part of day-to-day life. I like that. Gotta say, my least favorite out of these 5 is probably John. He's not bad, I definitely like him, but compared to the other ones who all have an immediate character, wide-eyed kid, tomboy, grump, and, gamer. But the most you get with John before the murders is just nice and cares for his sister, I guess. Again, I like him, but compared to the other 4, his personality feels less defined to me, or at least I wasn't able to grab it as easy as I could the other toy kids. Not long after being introduced to these new set of characters, however, we enter Murder Time! Again. Okay. This might be up there as one of my favorite scenes in the entirety of the OG comic. Have you ever seen William Afton be depicted as an 80s slasher villain, with it being shown in full detail as he slowly picks off his victims one by one in the pizzeria?
Would you like to?
I am concerned how many times I sound like a psycho as I make this video. Because that's what this is. It's just flat up a William Afton slasher movie. He's on the prowl, and the doors are locked. It's just them and him. There are 2 sides of this, and because I really like this scene, I'm gonna start with the positive stuff. First of all, this is probably the goriest the comic gets. I'm not sure how much of this stuff I can show, because I know at least one of the deaths is really fucking grim. Like, might get the channel taken down grim. So just know, some of this stuff gives, like, FNaF VHS a run for its money. And then just to keep up a pretty tense atmosphere all the way through as well, as William slowly picks them off. Jess's death scene is another one I want to point out. Again, the death itself I can't show because it's way too graphic for YouTube, I'm pretty sure. But at the same time, I feel like Ron and Paige's reactions to it kinda sum it up pretty well. What I can show you is the dialogue, and fuck man, she's literally sobbing. Honestly, I kinda need to credit Bond here. He could have easily made this just another he lures them to the back room and kills them thing, but no. Bond realized that he's already done that in the comic. So he goes for a different approach this time round. Plus, this whole part of the comic is a pretty big reference to the Save Them minigame from FNaF 2. Like, the location where Afton catches and kills each kid lines up with where you find the bodies in that minigame. That's just a neat attention to detail. I love that. So overall, pretty good. Can kinda see why he decided to cut the scene from the remake, though. Remember what I said ages ago about how it's kinda weird that no one saw William bring Charlie over to the kitchen? This scene is that, but on fucking steroids. These murders are all over the pizzeria, at least 2 are in the main area, and no one hears or sees this? Also, Lily mentions that apparently her and John's parents are going to be picking everyone up when it's time to go home, which definitely makes you question just how responsible their parents are. I know the comic never exactly tells us what time it is, but considering the lights are out, I think it's fair to assume that it's decently late in the day. And that's ignoring the fact that in order for the murder scene to play out, Afton has to basically be the only member of the staff still in the building. Which would mean it's like, what, 10, 11 p.m. at the absolute latest? You're letting your 4-year-old daughter stay up at 11 p.m.? Granted, it could have been earlier, I know, but at the same time, that still really leaves only 2 possible scenarios here. Either the restaurant's still open, and the staff have just become desensitized to William's antics, or the restaurant's closed right now, and John and Lily's parents are like Rugrats levels of irresponsible. So, yeah, I can see why I got the shaft from the remake and just had the toy kids die off screen. Some could call that lazy, but I'm not that bothered by it. It's an alternative way of getting around the fact that the comic already showed a murder scene at this point, while also avoiding the aforementioned issues which came with doing the hunt, I guess we can call it. Sucks the chase scene got removed, but at the same time, it's kind of understandable why. I'm not dumb, I think. Anyways, Sammy goes to get Freddy, they reenact Save Them, and run into William, who then proceeds to verbally own Sammy, who responds by running away. You fucking hypocrites. Also, while not exactly a criticism, I've noticed that Bond has this weird thing in this comic of drawing the withered animatronics with extra withering that's not there in the games. Kinda reminds me of this one Roblox game I used to play when I was a kid, in all honesty. Oh, speaking of the withereds, Chica finds Lily's ghost, shortly followed by finding John's. The wizards and the puppet then go and round up the new recruits, where we get a full look at the toy kids' ghost forms, which all look pretty good, but again, I'm pretty sure I'll get deleted off YouTube if I show Jessica's. I do like how she just straight up faints when she sees the animatronics alive, though. And we're then given the most heartbreaking thing I've ever seen done with this franchise. Seriously, like, this is like one time where reading the comic, I just thought, that fucking bastard, when it came to talking about William. Which is something the games have never made me do, which is weird when you remember just how much evil shit he's done in canon up to this point. Michael and the Shadows then show up, and this time it's Michael to tell the newbies that they have to go start killing night guards. And 3 of them are just like, yeah, sure, okay. I both like and hate that. I mean, I like it, it's funny, but at the same time, feels like it's a kind of lazy way of getting around the repeating thing. Plus, this comic is usually pretty serious when it comes to scenes like this. Yet, now we have these guys who are like, yo, dude, what? I don't want to kill people. Sure, why not? It's another scene I feel the remake does better. Though the original is more funny, but at the same time, in a comic like this, do you really want a scene like that to be funny? Probably not. Cut to the next day, and we see that Freddy's is going under investigation, where we then meet this police officer woman who turns out to be John and Lily's mother, which I guess explains why she couldn't pick up John, Lily, and the others, but even then, what's Dad's excuse? Gotta say, I do like the subtlety of these 2 panels here when she realizes that her 2 kids were taken as well. Also liked this scene where Phone Guy straight up has an MCU moment as he walks into the management's office to record his FNaF 2 Night 1 phone call. The phone's even the same one in his icon from Ultimate Custom Night, that's a neat detail. Then again, it could just be a totally normal blue phone, so don't quote me on that. After that, we see the toy kids' parents outside. I can't really say much about this scene without just repeating what I already said about the OG5's parents, so moving on. The cops say they're then going to bring in the new kid to work as a night guard at Freddy's over the course of the next week. You know what that means. Hi, kids! You like violence? Want me to grab a spare bear suit and stuff you inside it? The remainder of the comic is taken up with an adaptation of Five Nights at Freddy's 2 in the same way we had an adaptation of FNaF 4 earlier. Only unlike the FNaF 4 arc, which was kind of just the mini-games in comic book form, the FNaF 2 arc is helped by the fact that this time we're seeing the events of the game play out from the perspective of the animatronics, which is a pretty cool concept. The bulk of Night 1 is pretty simple. Lily/Toy Bonnie goes to get the night guard, Toy Bonnie is fooled by the mask, Jessica tries to go after him as Toy Chica, and is also fooled by the mask. There are two things of note, however. The first thing is the detail that Michael wants them to just mess with the night guard and not kill him, realizing that this guy is a cop and ergo probably not the murderer, even though Sammy told him that they should just kill him anyway. Speaking of Sammy, the second detail is that while listening to the music box, he's reminded of his dear old dad. Daughter. Kinda wondering if this was put here solely because Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator was a recent thing at the time. Also, I'm pretty sure this is the first time we've seen Sammy show a genuine emotion since, like, the time he blew up at the other four kids for telling Michael to piss off. That wasn't coded in his usual insanity, at least. Next up, Night 2 time! The OG4 end up learning about the Freddy Fazbear mask and how it may end up hindering the plan, which prompts Francis to take matters into his own hands. And also Kenny exists. Also, Francis is kind of sexist. This is probably just a me thing, but the interactions between the toys and the wizards kinda reminds me of these old SFM FNaF series videos that used to be all over the place on YouTube. You know, if they actually bothered to include the whole animatronics are possessed by dead kids thing. Weird, because I'm pretty sure it's only because of the rivalry thing. Anyways, after Francis threatens Ronald to go get Jeremy's flashlight batteries, Paige enters the vent, only to find that Jeremy is also her brother? Oh yeah, this is back when Jeremy's main personality trait in FanWorks was the coward. Real talk though, I do like the twist. Mainly due to the fact that it actually does end up affecting things on Night 3. Unlike some of the FNaF 4 stuff where, for as much as I like it, it was more of a novelty than anything. Ronald tells Francis about Jeremy and Paige's siblinghood, where he says he'll give the news to the others. To which their reaction is, who fucking gives a shit? He could still be the killer, let's kill him anyway. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't recall that many people liking this decision all that much, calling the original crew jerks. I personally don't actually mind it all that much, but I'm lying if I didn't say it couldn't have been handled better. I feel like if we'd actually gotten to see that slow descent, along with all the stuff Daniel described earlier in the comic, instead of just cutting away to Kenny for who knows how long, then I think people would probably have less of a problem with it. Also, prior to this, when Connor and Chloe take Kenny outside after he freaks out, due to Francis scaring him, you get a panel of Molten Freddy lurking in the sewers. Characters from the later games showing up isn't exactly a recent thing. Chloe first mentioned Elizabeth when she and Connor were first introduced, and later on, Kenny has a run-in with Michael in the FNaF 4 arc, who honestly is really only Michael in name only. He has that little to do with the actual character. I know realistically I probably should have talked about this sooner, but I couldn't really find a good place in the video to talk about it until now, so here we are. So let's talk about it now, because I have a few questions. First off, how does the sister location private room work in this context? We already established by this point that these two here have no relation to William, so why does William have full surveillance of their house? Children Replayed does go into a few ideas on how this supposedly works. For context, it's something Bond released that went a bit into the behind-the-scenes story of the comic, both the original and the remake, claiming that William just kidnapped Kenny every night, and somehow his dad never noticed? Plus, this is never really mentioned in the comic itself. The only nightmare animatronic we see is Plushtrap. And even then, that scene more implies he's a figment of Kenny's imagination than anything else. Maybe the intention was that seeing the plushie reminded Kenny of being in the simulation? That's my best guess as to what this would have been. And even then, I can't fully blame the guy. It kinda was just leave it as an open plot hole or jump over hurdles to try and make an explanation work. So you gotta give him that he did at least try with the latter. And did base it off what was already a pretty well-believed theory at the time. Speaking of well-believed theories at the time of Sister Location's release, the comic was also going to include Michael being Springtrap, which... why? I'm not usually one to dunk on this theory, but even after Will Trap got confirmed, they were apparently still gonna go through with Michael being Springtrap, which, from what we know, I don't think I'd really be a fan of this if they did it. The symmetry with Michael and William's deaths that I mentioned earlier is gone now. Now Michael doesn't get to do to William what he did to him. Michael gets to do it to some random guy he barely knew. Also, how does Pizzeria Simulator work under this context exactly? Like I said, we have seen Molten Freddy, so I can only assume some version of that game takes place in this continuity. I mean, for the most part, it doesn't contradict anything. Literally just change daughter to son in the ending monologue, and Lefty's pretty much the same as far as I can tell. Mostly.
For you, and for those you have carried in your arms.
Interesting way of saying everybody that you tricked. But if Michael's Springtrap, then who were we playing as? The obvious answer would be William, but in the game, Henry says that the job wasn't initially meant for Michael, meaning it probably wouldn't be intended for William either if their roles were swapped. And that's assuming the comic was even gonna get to Pizzeria Simulator, which, considering our main focus was the OG crew, I doubt. It seems more likely we were gonna stop at FNaF 3, in which case, wow, if we're following Mike Trap, that would have been a really unsatisfying ending. My best guess on how the comic would have ended on this logic is Springtrap would have gone to find William, as most interpretations of the Mike Trap theory have him do, and then the missing children, who are our main characters of this story, just give up and go to heaven as we reenact Happiest Day. Or at least, that's my best guess on what was gonna happen. And even then, we're ending the comic on a cliffhanger for a game that technically doesn't exist. Or at least, not in the way the comic seemingly portrays it happening. Plus, under Sammy's whole logic of forgiveness doesn't get you anywhere, what prompted him to just decide that everybody could go now? Was he just like, well, looks like this guy has way more beef with William than we do. Let's just let him kill him instead. So basically, we killed several night guards only for you to say, screw it, let someone else handle it? Yeah, pretty much. Actually, random thought, was the OG comic originally gonna end with the other kids just abandoning Sammy? Because on one hand, I could totally see that happening, but on the other hand, it kinda breaks pre-established rules. So, who knows? Maybe William was originally going to be the FNaF 3 guard, I don't know. I didn't really want to bug the Discord server with a billion different questions, so I just kept it to the main one I was curious about. So, we're probably just going to be left to speculate for now. Unless he decides to reveal this stuff on his own. And it's not like the reboot's going to be confirming anything, as it's openly stated in its description that only counts the first 4 games. Mainly to help with pacing, but I just also assume because he realized that Sister Location in FNaF 6, and basically any game after FNaF 4 doesn't really affect the story of the comic all that much. And as a result, means that William is going to be Springtrap in that version. I know I'm harping on this a lot, but I just don't know why they decided to keep using Mike Trap even after it was deconfirmed. Not only does it raise several questions, but it also, like I said earlier, ruins aspects of the story that I like, which makes the decision to use it kind of weird to me, in case you couldn't already tell. We can! Either way, with that all out of my system, we can move on to Night 3. Mangle, now knowing that the security guard in the office is actually her brother, understandably doesn't want him to be murdered and tries to stop the Wizards, getting the other toy animatronics to help. The first one to try being Jessica, who runs into Daniel. Beyond the stuff I already mentioned, I do like how Daniel goes on to explain why he was wearing a brown shirt with Freddy on it the same day he died and conveniently possessed Freddy, saying that they were all meant to dress up as their favorite character for Michael's birthday party. Cheap, maybe, but compared to most missing children back then, hey, at least they actually bothered to give an explanation. Also like how since Daniel's blind due to how William killed him, they established that he's actually gotten really good at hearing, being able to differentiate wizard animatronic footsteps from toy animatronic footsteps. I like that, it's cool. Anyways, just as Daniel's about to explain to Jessica why they go after random night guards, we cut away to Charlie and Lily, with the latter trying to distract the former from getting in the office. I do kind of like how innocent Lily's attempt is compared to everyone else's. Like, Paige is filled with rage, Jessica's trying to just see their side of the story, and then Lily just goes for the most cartoony way imaginable of doing it. I like it, it's adorable. If you don't like Lily, you have no soul. I don't make the rules. But uh-oh, Lily starts to catch on to the fact that what the wizard animatronics are doing to the night guard might be something bad. Oh, that's the last page. Alright then. Yep, after 327 pages, Children was cancelled. Technically. Shortly after page 327, Bonfim made a post on his Reddit talking about how he was going to reboot the comic, detailing all the problems he had with the original, such as the bad pacing, the messy plot, basically all stuff I've already talked about in this video, which led to the creation of Children Rekindled, which he's still working on today. There was, however, another attempt at rebooting the comic back in August of 2017 called Children Abridged. Not much is really known about it, but from what I can see, it was seemingly going to be not just a more cleaned up version of the original comic, but was also going to be, quote, more closely following canon FNaF. Going off that and what little else we know about it, I personally think Abridged would have effectively turned out to be a children version of MatPat's 2017 timeline.
Oops.
If you look at the 2 pages of Abridged that are publicly available, which are also the only 2 that were ever made, we see Charlie and Francis, but the other kids are only ever referred to as them. To me, them could totally be referring to just Daniel and Bianca, and could potentially mean that Michael was gonna get scrapped completely, and the comic was gonna follow the Golden Freddy is the FNAF 4 kid theory. Which, hey, would have fixed the complaints I had about the FNAF 4 arc. Some of them at least. Granted, all of that is pretty much just speculation, but considering Bond had already started depicting Kenny as Golden Freddy in a few of his art pieces that weren't children related at the time, it's possible. That same logic did end up panning out for the whole green shirt kid is Mike Schmidt theory after all. I'm definitely interested in what Abridged would have looked like if it actually came out. By 2017, we definitely had a more clear picture on what sister location was meant to be, which means that some of the wonkiness of how it was interpreted in the original would probably be cleaned up. I'm definitely interested in what Bond's interpretation would be of the actual Michael Afton, but at the same time, I could totally see this falling flat on its face. I could totally see a scenario where the comic tries to juggle both the missing kids and the Aftons and just kind of drops the ball and becomes a mess. Like, think about it. If sister locations being more properly included this time, then Kenny would likely be an Afton in this version, which means you would kind of have to get into the Afton family stuff, right? Does that mean we're going to have an arc adapting sister location in the same way the original adapted FNAF 4 and FNAF 2? Because that has the potential to be really awkward depending on where you put it. Like, were we just gonna cut away from the missing kids to follow Michael for a few pages? Because if the fun times basically add nothing to the main plot, then you've got the FNAF 4 arcs problem again. So, yeah, while I'm definitely interested in what Abridged could have looked like, I can definitely agree that Rekindled was probably the better outcome overall. And just like that, we're finally done! So now we can finally wrap this up. And overall, while I've definitely got my gripes with it personally, I still really like this comic. Sure, Rekindled is objectively better, but this one's still pretty good. And overall, a pretty cool encapsulation of a lost era of the fandom in a way. And above all that, I like how it shows a more depressing side of these games. Something that's, while the norm now, really wasn't back in early 2016. Well, I guess Springaling kinda did, depending on how you look at it. But at the same time, I don't think that comic went as in-depth with the missing children as Bonfim's did. It was a lot more focused on Purple Guy than anyone else. At least from what I can recall. Maybe I'll do a video on that comic in the future, I don't know. This video's already getting really long. Like, I did not expect this to be an hour. So, I'll leave it at that. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll see you in the next one.